guys doing today? Hope everybody's doing well here after we're back from the holiday break. I am really honored and excited to be with you today to be able to present a little bit about the YMCA here in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. The place that I hold very near and dear to my heart. I've been here for a long time, so I've been able to hold lots of different roles and see lots of different roles. So I'm really honored to be able to talk a little bit about the Y and some of the mission work that the Y does. Because I can tell you that when I was your age, even though I grew up near the Fond du Lac Y, I grew up in Lomira, Wisconsin, I didn't step foot in the Y more than one time, I think, until I was 18 years old. So just not a place that I knew anything about, and nor my family was connected to. And once I got to college, I took an opportunity with a part-time role here, and it opened my eyes quite a bit. And the fact that I'm still here, able to be here at the Y, I'm just honored to be able to share about the great work that the Y does and some of the career opportunities that even happen within the Y. Because I think when, at least for me, when I had a perception of the Y, it was just a fun place to go. It was maybe like a Chuck E. Cheese. It didn't really seem like a career opportunity for me, something that kids and families could maybe just go and have some fun at that day. Really had no idea about the inner workings and some of the opportunities there. So I am really, really excited to be able to share some of that today with you all. So we'll get started here. I'll try not to get too lengthy. This is going to be a little awkward, knowing because I would always much rather present with an audience and be able to interact and answer questions and those kinds of things. But I'm certainly happy to answer any additional questions beyond today's presentation if you have them. So I don't know if I said this or not, but my name is JJ Rafflik. I'm the CEO and Executive Director here at the Fond du Lac Family YMCA. As I mentioned, I'm just super honored to still be here. I've been here nearly 20 years in some capacity, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through some of the different roles that I've been able and fortunate to hold here, and some of the other roles that are here at the Y. We are located in Fond du Lac, kind of in the heart of downtown Fond du Lac, so just off of 2nd Street, across from the post office, if you're familiar at all. We're in a great spot because we're really centrally located within Fond du Lac, so it's easy access from everywhere within the city. So my information is down there as well. So if you ever have any questions, or you're curious, or if you're in high school, you want a part-time job, we're a great spot to consider. So we'd love to have that conversation. So, all right. So when I was asked to do this, what I really wanted to do was to not focus solely on my current role, because I think if you would have asked me as a middle school student or high school student if I had any aspirations to be a CEO or an executive director anywhere, I would have said nope. I have no idea what that means. It sounds awful, but I just want to do something that I enjoy. So I thought maybe today I could kind of paint a broader picture of some of the opportunities and some of the roles here within the Y. So I wanted to focus on two main areas, and I'll talk about some of the roles that are within these areas a little bit more specifically as we go through. But really what I thought I'd focus on today, partly because it's been my path to my current role, but there's a lot of different roles within what I consider program operations. So that's one aspect of whatever things happen at the Y. So I'll explain once we get to the next slide a little bit more. But the second one would be executive leadership. So I would say over my time here, the first half of my career had been really specifically working within program operations. And now the second half, well, maybe over the last 8 years or so, I've been in what's considered executive leadership, with different roles within that as well. So hopefully I can paint that picture for you a little bit, maybe spark some interest and see if anything might apply to what you might be considering doing in the future as well. So, all right, next slide. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I probably have too many words on these slides. So I'm going to promise not to read to everybody on here, but I thought if you're going back and wanted to see a little bit more of what I was talking about, I wanted to give enough explanation on these slides as to what I was talking about. But the slide is titled "A Day in the Life," and we kind of joke about that around here, that there are never 2 days the same at the Y, and that's part of why we love working at the Y. There could be very different things in programs happening or conversations happening and different members coming into the facility on a daily basis, and never are 2 days the same. And that's part of the fun. It can be a little challenging because, it's not like maybe a normal job where you can punch a time clock at 9 o'clock in the morning and punch out at 5 p.m. And there's just not sometimes that consistency. But again, for us, it's part of why we love the work that we are able to do here at the Y. So I should probably also back up and explain, really within the Y, there are 3 main things that we really try to focus on. And you'll see this as part of our tagline and a lot of different things on our flyers and our program booklets and guides. But we really say that we stand for 3 main things, and it's 1, youth development. So that kind of focuses on a lot of any of the youth programs that we might run and that you might already know are associated with the Y. So it could be things like youth sports programs or gymnastics or youth swimming or childcare or those kinds of things here at the Y. The second thing we focus on heavily is healthy living. So that could be anything from exercise individually or exercise group classes, or maybe what we consider maybe chronic disease type classes, where we run a program that's for cancer survivors. We run a program for those folks that might be dealing with Parkinson's disease. So lots of different healthy living type programs that we're supporting folks throughout the community with. And then the third thing is really social responsibility. So youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility are the 3 main things that we try to focus on day in and day out. The social responsibility is a little bit harder to kind of explain, only because I think for every Y, social responsibility is a little bit different. Really what that means at the core is that we try to work really well with the rest of the community to see what is the need and how can the Y help with that. Who can we partner with? For us at the Y in Fond du Lac, the greatest example of that would be we have a great partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Fond du Lac. So much so that we share a building with the Boys and Girls Club of Fond du Lac. So we partnered about 12 years ago with and raised money to build a brand new facility or a renovated facility here on site. And it, again, within the walls, the Boys and Girls Club is in the same building as the Y. That works really well because as the Y, we're able to serve some of those club kids, whether it's swimming lessons or youth programs or gym activities or fitness classes, while the Boys and Girls Club has a great space on their end. And then we can also send kids and families to utilize the after-school programming and the expertise that the Boys and Girls Club has. So for us, social responsibility, that's one of the greater examples that we have, knowing that we can work together really well with other organizations. So you might actually hear from Liz from the ARC with one of these presentations as well, and we have a great partnership with the ARC, so they're able to come over and utilize our facilities for some of their Special Olympics basketball and Special Olympics swimming programs as well. So those are some of the things that we feel as a Y we need to be able to do to open our doors to everybody in the community in some way, shape, or form. So, all right, so kind of getting back to the day in the life. So as I talked about, no 2 days are ever the same, and that's partly because we serve everybody as much as we possibly can. So when I say that, we have kind of a saying within the Y is that we serve everybody from cradle to grave. So that means, we're seeing babies that might be 6 weeks old in our child care center. And then one of my favorite members, her name is Jane. She's 99. She comes in twice a week to get her exercise in. So we are serving 6 weeks old all the way up to 99 years old and beyond. So that's one of the reasons that no 2 days are the same, because we never serve the same type of people on a daily basis. So we're serving lots of variety. So some of the roles within that talk about that. So as I've listed here, things like our child care director and our sports and gymnastics director. Sports director is really where I got my start. So I had gone to college here locally and took a part-time job and ended up interning here at the Y. And then my first professional role out of college was as a sports coordinator and director here at the Fond du Lac Y. So I was in charge of running like football programs and youth basketball programs. It was always, I would always chuckle and have great conversations with families at that time, because people would thank me for what we were doing for playing football and youth basketball. They would say, "Hey, you're doing a great job. My kid loves the program." And then I would get a parent that might ask me, "What do you do for a living? Or what do you do for your career?" And I would have to kind of chuckle, and I would say, this is my career. This is what I wanted to do. It's a full-time job, and I'm excited to be able to do it. and serve families of the community in this way. So there's always maybe some of that misconception that maybe that's not a career that I could do. It's something fun. It's something I really was enjoying doing, and I could make a career out of it. So I wanted to share that little tidbit. So other things like family enrichment director, those are things like helping with family nights, and maybe we have a child watch center, which is like a drop-in babysitting opportunity here at the Y, and some youth enrichment classes. So maybe kids that are not quite in school yet, but don't need full-time daycare. Maybe they're taking an arts class. That's what that role does. A healthy living coordinator, I talked about some of those other programs before, really just focus on keeping people healthy and developing programs for that. Personal training coordinator, maybe somebody wants a little bit extra one-on-one attention. So maybe you're really into fitness and you want to take a career path that way. Personal training coordinator or director or healthy living director are great roles to take a look at for the long-term future as well. So the last bullet point here, I said these roles are all in charge of developing and implementing programs within their specific area. So I kind of talked a little bit about that as far as like the sports example, for instance, and as my role was really on a day-to-day basis, organizing teams and setting up schedules and hiring referees and talking with parents and ordering t-shirts and finding sponsors for those teams. And so those kinds of things. My role is very different now, but those are some of the things that early on, those type of roles are kind of doing on a day-to-day basis within their own program. So, all right, I'm going to move on to the next slide so we can keep going here. But the next one here, a day in the life, and this is really just focusing on the executive leadership piece of things. So beyond that, we have roles here that really work with lots of different areas within the Y. I put on here, which is the same as the last slide, that it's fun and exciting and no 2 days are the same, because that doesn't change no matter what level you're at here, whether you're a lifeguard that works 5 hours a week or whether you're in my seat here working full time. That holds true. No 2 days are the same. Some of the roles within executive leadership are a little bit lengthier in title and a little bit broader in the sense of what they do. But as I mentioned, CEO, there's an associate executive director, there's a mission advancement director that's in charge of a lot of fundraising and talking about the mission work and the great things that the Y does. We have a communications director that is in charge of trying to get the word out about not only our programs, but some of the great mission work and health living programs and the scholarship opportunities that we offer to families. I should have mentioned this earlier, but we're a nonprofit organization. So, we work really hard to be able to serve everybody, regardless of their ability to get here to the Y or to pay. We want to make sure we are offering the opportunity to everybody. So we have great scholarship programs that allow for anybody and everybody to utilize the Y at different points. So other things such as CFO, which stands for Chief Financial Officer. So if you're really in the numbers and those kinds of things, like accounting, somebody has to constantly look at the money coming in, the money going out. That's what the CFO means, Chief Financial Officer. And then we have roles like HR, which stands for Human Resources. That is really a role that works with all the other internal employees. You might be surprised to know we have over 200 employees here at the Y. Now, only about 40 of those are full-time roles. The rest of them are what we call our frontline staff, like I mentioned before, lifeguards and front desk workers and youth sports referees and some of those things that you might see more with high school kids or college students, or maybe somebody wants a second part-time job and we can hire them to do some of those things. So those are some of the additional roles here as well. So I also mentioned, and I won't get in, like I mentioned, as far as the details of some of the bullet points here, but these roles as executive leadership are kind of in charge of the broader picture. So they're not necessarily worrying about ordering the t-shirts and forming the teams like you would as a sports director, but you're in charge of really looking at the overall big picture. What's our goal? How many people do we want to serve? Are there people in the community that we aren't serving that the Y can serve a need for? And all of those roles work together to try to get us to that point. So I kind of gave an example there about our strategy to get to 12,000 members. That was about a 2 to 3 year strategy. We were at about 11,000 members before that. We changed our scholarship scale so we could support more people. We changed membership and age categories that would grab more individuals and make it more affordable. And then we added things like virtual fitness classes. And who knew 2 years ago that virtual type fitness classes would be the new wave? But we said, hey, if somebody comes in at 2 in the afternoon and we don't have what we call a body pump exercise class running, but we can put it up on a big screen, it might allow people to be able to do it, even if it's 1 or 2 people going into that room to exercise. So we are very excited that we have some of those opportunities. So all of those were strategies that took a lot of moving parts from the executive leadership team and then our program operation team to implement and to help us get to that goal. So we're constantly looking at not only what's going on currently, but what's going to go on as an organization in 6, 12, or 24 months from now. So that's kind of the gist of the executive leadership piece of it. All right. So the next slide here, I want to talk a little bit about education and qualifications needed. A little bit about my background. I think the one thing I want to make clear here is that there are lots of different education and background that we see within all of our roles here at the Y. There's no one answer as to what do I need to do to have a career at the Y, because just about everybody that's on staff here from a full-time capacity has a different path to get here. So as far as for me, I went to college for a 4-year degree. I went to Marion, it was college at the time before it was university. I graduated in 2003 from Marion College. And I had a business degree. It was called a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. And I was able to do a focus on sports and rec management. Now, in high school, I was a big sports nut. You can probably see behind me, I got a Brewer wall here in my office. When somebody said I could have a career in sports, it really kind of piqued my interest. And I know that's not for everybody, but as I started looking into it, I thought that only meant I could go work for the Brewers. I could go work for the Packers or the Bucks. Really, it wasn't until I started really digging into it, I could figure out that that's not all it meant. I could work within sports. As I mentioned, I was running a lot of youth sports programs. I was working with kids. I was working with families. I loved every minute of it. And I had a minor in coaching. So as far as a minor in coaching, it was very helpful. Looking back, anything that you can take from a minor or double major even standpoint that might be a good complement to your major is always good. I kind of wish I would have done more marketing in college, or maybe even IT work, something that would maybe have benefited me a little bit longer term here within my role at the Y. But sports and rec management was a lot of fun to go through and learn about the operations of a place like the Y, and coaching has certainly helped me get a start within here as well. So I think I wrote down here that I think to get to be a CEO position, I think you do need a 4-year degree. But I will say that we have hired full-time program operations roles that didn't have a 4-year degree. We had a sports director that was great at what they did. I did not have a degree. I had other experience. So I'm not here to tell you that that's not that we shouldn't be looking at that, because that's not the case. But and it's very helpful, because a lot of those things are going to give you the tools to have an opportunity. But that's not the sole reason that we always look to hire somebody. So if they have the skill set, example I use down here is about 6 years ago, I hired an aquatics director that had a teaching degree. So she had gone through school, loved what she was doing with teaching for about 4 years, but had always worked at the Y part-time in high school and even in college, and a little bit in the summers. And she kind of ran and operated the outdoor pool as just a side job. And she was always connected to the Y. So through some conversations, and it wasn't my intent to pull her away from her career, but she started asking some questions and thought, I really love working with the pool. I love working with people and families in this capacity. And she decided to make a career change. And she didn't have a background schooling in pool work at that time, but she had a great background in education and working with people. So that, in my mind, made her very qualified for that job. And she has been a tremendous asset here to the Y. Her current role is Director of Program Development. So kind of the bigger picture of all the programs, as I kind of mentioned before. So lots of opportunities within, and it doesn't always mean, hey, this is the only, if somebody has a degree in this field, that's the only people that we're going to consider. That's just not the case. We're going to look at somebody's skill set, somebody's background, maybe an experience as well. So, all right, that kind of leads me into the next one, which is skills needed. So I just kind of broke down a couple of the different areas, and I'll pick out a couple of things here. But again, I'm going to pull from my experience a little bit, but as a sports director, I would say it was very important to have a solid background that you could work with people. That was huge for me as far as that was my thing. I had thought about being a teacher and coach. That was appealing to me as well because I loved working with people and kids. And this kind of gave me a different avenue to do that. So on weeknights or on Saturday mornings, I was seeing 300 kids on the flag football field and all their families and able to talk with them and help them through that program. And that was a lot of fun. So you need to be well organized to make sure that was run when you're dealing with 300 kids in a flag football program. But that was really some of the skills that were important for that role. So, and then I'll highlight a little bit here, like the healthy living director, for instance. So, that individual has a large passion for wellness and being fit and helping people overcome and reach their goals. That was not my background, so that was not an initial fit for me, but those that are working in that field are tremendous at what they do, and they live it and they breathe it on a daily basis. So from an executive leadership standpoint, similar to what I wrote, similar to above, in that each executive role is asked to serve many areas. So those roles that are listed there, they kind of have a piece of every part of the organization. So as a communications director, for instance, you're in charge of communicating every single department and individual programs that are happening within the Y out to the masses. So you're not just in charge of one area. That's kind of an organization-wide role. Same thing with like program development, as I mentioned before. They're in charge of all of the programs and working with those healthy living directors or sports directors to make sure that maybe it's happening at the same time, or we're filling a need with an offering there. So there's a lot of roles within that executive leadership that you're not just kind of pigeonholed into one different area. You're working with a lot of the different pieces of the organization. So, all right. And then as far as the CEO piece of it goes, my role in here is a little bit more outside of these walls than they are internally. So our associate executive director definitely handles a lot of the day-to-day operations. My role really is to help connect the Y to outside collaborations and parts of the community, and connecting with other folks, like we're doing today, to say, hey, the Y is a great place. The Y is maybe a career opportunity for everybody. So there's lots of different things that each role kind of brings to the table within that executive leadership role as well. So certainly I shouldn't make it sound like my role is not day-to-day operation, because it very much is. I have to make sure that all the pieces are running here smoothly on a daily basis. But sometimes I have a little bit more meetings with outside organizations than I am having on an inside organization piece, because we have great people that do great work and know their job very, very well. So I have a lot of trust in our staff and our team in a lot of these different areas. So, all right, we'll move on to the next one here. Pay range. This is always one that I have a hard time talking about a little bit. As a nonprofit, I would definitely say, and statistics will show that nonprofit work is not going to pay as well as for-profit work. So your big corporations and your different entities are just not going to, unfortunately, be in the same pay range. But I will say this: you can make a good career and a good living within nonprofit work. And I think if it's something you're passionate about, then having a job that you enjoy, it sounds cliche, is going to go much further than making sure you have a few extra dollars on a paycheck every week. But that being said, you can still make a very good living. I talked about program operations role, and I kind of, that's a range, and it varies. In some cases, bigger Ys, different Ys, that range is higher. But kind of conservatively, I'm saying it's about 35 to 50 from a starting point from within program operations role. And that's, to me, it's always been very comparable to hey, you want to become a teacher and those kinds of things. You can make a good living as a teacher, a similar type of a role there. Within executive leadership, the range is much larger depending on the role and depending on the size of the Y. So I can tell you on the highest end of that is not stuff that we are looking at internally here at the Fond du Lac Y. We're a small Y by comparison. But if you're down in the Milwaukee area or Madison area, let's say even bigger like Houston or Cincinnati, those are big Ys that have several different locations within their Y. Those type of roles then are going to pay higher and much above that range that I listed there. So really the message is, love what you do, number one, and two, you can make a good living within nonprofit work as well. All right, so classes to take in high school. So ahead of what I share here, it's been a long time since I've been in high school, so some of it I might be out of touch with even what is offered here. But as I look back a little bit on my career and some of the things that I took, I would say, I think I passed and I didn't passed up on, I should say. I did not take as many of the business classes that I probably could have back at that point, mainly because I didn't know or understand, but there's probably a variety of options. If you see business related and this is the type of work you'd like to get in, or anything business related, you should take that opportunity and just learn as early as you can. Math classes, I chuckle when I say that because I know you either love or you hate math. I grew up loving it, and it's been very helpful. But I'm here to also say that it doesn't mean you have to love it. If you can just take some opportunities to understand it a little bit more, because we ask all of our staff here at the Y, to kind of know and operate their own budget. It's not complicated, but if a sports program, we ask them, what do you think the price should be for the program that you're offering, and how much is it going to cost you to pay a referee? How much is it going to cost you to order T-shirts or jerseys for those teams? So just understanding like what your overall costs are, and that just comes from just kind of knowing basic math. So we don't make it complicated for our staff, but we ask them to learn as we go. So we've had a lot of people learn a lot about the budgeting through math lessons here, even at the Y. And then leadership classes, I can't stress that enough. We actually call ourselves leaders here at the Y instead of, we don't like using the word directors or coordinators as much. Even we used to have a manager on duty schedule, which meant that a lot of us took turns kind of being on call or being able to do tours. We no longer call it manager on duty. We call it cause-driven leader on duty. That's kind of a mouthful, but for us, we as a Y like to share our cause and our mission work. We want all of our directors or coordinators to be able to show that and be proud of that. And we consider them all leaders. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or two as well. But anytime you have an opportunity to take a leadership class or read a leadership book, I would always encourage you to do that, because no matter what role you're going to have, you're going to be a leader in that role. So, all right. So this one, I think we're getting towards the end here. But my advice, and it's going to be pretty basic and maybe even cliche a little bit, but finding your passion within what you do on a daily basis and what you choose from a career, to me, is key. And it doesn't mean you have to know that answer right away. There's a lot of people that change careers early on. I know people that change their major when they get to college. They've changed their mind on what role they want to go several different times. I had a good friend of mine that got a sports and recreation degree with me, that we graduated college together. And as soon as he got out, decided, I want to go back to school. I want to change this. I want to be a teacher and a coach. So he took 2 more years of schooling to become an educator, and he's an educator and a coach right now. So he loves what he's doing. So that's, there's no time frame on that. So always kind of have an end goal and your passion in mind, and make sure you're kind of finding a path to get there. So that kind of leads me to my second one here. Keep the end goal in mind here. If your dream job is to be a CEO at the Y and work within this type of field, make sure you're taking opportunities to do that. So, if you're in high school or you're in college, and this is maybe a role you want to do, look to get a part-time job here so you can understand different parts of the organization. That goes for any interest or business that you might have. If you want to work with people and work in this type of environment, I would encourage you not to go work and do factory work in the winter, only because if you have an opportunity within the Y or in a business that you're interested in, you can learn a lot as you go through it. And I did as well as soon as I started working part-time in college. So the third bullet point there says, be the CEO of your area. And this is something we talk about a lot here. So I view our personal training coordinator as the CEO of our personal training. I want her and her expertise to be able to run all of that and give us the advice. It's not for me to give that advice and dictate how that's going. I'm going to have conversations with her and she's going to give us advice on what we should be doing, and we'll talk that through and see how it can work. We want everybody to kind of own their area, whether that's in finance or sports or gymnastics or any of the other roles within. So that's a huge thing. Own whatever you're doing, whether it's flipping burgers at McDonald's like I was in high school. Be good at it and take it seriously, and always look for different things to make it better. So the last piece there is, and this is always big for me, is just to lead by example. And there's lots of quotes and lots of different things that you can take a look at. I do love this one by a gentleman named Stephen Covey. It says, "What you do has far greater impact than what you say." I think that's a really simple way for everybody to understand, to say, you're going to be judged right or wrong by every step that you make and every effort that you put in and everything that you do within those walls. So that kind of leads me to my last bullet point on there. I always feel like you are always interviewing, and you don't even know that you're always interviewing. People, coworkers, other managers know, and they can see who's worthy. So if we have opportunities, even if it's a little bit more of a role, let's say we have a lifeguards in the pool, and we are looking to hire somebody that's what we say a shift supervisor, somebody that can kind of be the go-to person on that shift. Right away, that manager in that area is going to probably be able to pull off the top of their head one or two individuals that they think are worthy. And that's really based on their interaction and their work ethic with them. So I've also seen, we as a Y, we operate with a board of directors. So we have 20 individuals on our board of directors. About 6 or 7 years ago, we had an individual on our board of directors that had a role within the community. And by the time she left our board of directors, was recruited by our board president, who works at another organization in town, to work in a different role, because they were impressed with how this individual conducted themselves as a board of directors. So I should also mention, I shouldn't just drop board of directors without an explanation, but we, as a nonprofit, we have to have a group of individuals. We call them our board. It's actually who I report to. They're volunteers, and they just kind of help guide the ship and make some major decisions for the organization, while they hire me to do a lot of that work internally. But they are helping us kind of move the needle and set the direction of the overall organization. So I actually report to 20 volunteers. So that's how my role sits. So anyway, that's kind of what I mean by lead by example. I think it's key to everybody's success in moving forward as well. So, all right, I think that's my last slide. Again, I normally would want to be able to open this up for questions and answer anything that you guys might have. I really appreciate your time today. I apologize if I've gone a little bit long, but don't hesitate to call. I think on that first slide, I have my information on there. I would be more than happy to talk and connect with anybody if there's any questions at all. I wish you a lot of luck this continued school year, and as you start to think about what your long-term and career path is going to be, don't stress about it. Just let those things come to you, and I know you're going to land in a great spot. So again, thank you for having me. Stop by the Y. I'd love to see you and meet you, and give you a tour at any point as well. So all right, everybody, thank you. Take care.